Chair Kohler,
Here.
Vice Chair McKinnon, Board Member Bernstein,
Here.
Board Member Powell,
Here.
Board Member Vandenberg,
Here.
Board Member DeSicchio, Board Member Wimmer. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if you guys want to move over or just gonna, or not. It's okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's meeting of the Historic Resources Board on June 25th, 2015. Wow. Are there any oral communications? Anybody like to say anything before we move on? None I see. Any agenda changes?
No agenda changes, thank you.
Okay. Do we have minutes to approve?
Yes, Chair Kohler.
Okay. Yes,
Is it
Martin.
a question for staff? Is it okay if the board agrees to approve all 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of minutes in one motion?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, thanks. I'll move approval. Go ahead.
I had one question or correction, though.
Okay.
Okay, and the one I had a question on is April the 23rd, and in the draft minutes on page 4, line 42, I wasn't quite sure why Matthew had reported that the cottage was not listed on the city or state historic inventory. It appeared to be the original structure built on the property. Should that have been California and state, because it was on the original inventory that Palo Alto set up?
Thank you. Yes, I believe we'll have to go back and see exactly what I said on the tape. I believe my intention was to say California and National Register, so it wasn't listed on either the California or the National Register. It is, of course, listed on the city's inventory currently. So thank you for that apparent correction. We'll look at the tape and see if we need to make any notation, but we'll make that correction.
My reading of that is that if you read the previous line, Pat asked if 739 was listed in the historic register. And so I think that's your answer is in reference to 739, not 755.
Okay, that makes sense.
Agreed, thank you.
You don't have anything to do, so you can go back and check it anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Okay, so we'll move to approve all 4 sets of minutes with any modifications per what Board Member Beth Vandenberg just mentioned.
So I'll second.
It's been motioned to approve the minutes of the April 9th, 23rd, May 28th, and June 11th the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's approved with everyone voting yes and Pat DeSicchio absent. So that brings us down to public hearings. 1305 Middlefield Road. Request by City of Palo Alto Public Works Department for historic review for a proposal to install a new HVAC mechanical equipment and a new fence enclosure at the exterior southeast corner of the Lucy Stern Community Center, which is a Category 1 historic structure site. Public hearing. Staff, I guess? Yes.
Thank you, Chair Kohler. We do have department staff here. Phil Krasowski, thank you.
Okay, this is a project that is adding cooling to the community center over at Lucy Stern meeting room. There has been none in the past. This is all new equipment. The challenge was going through the project and locating a proper place to place the equipment. Let's see, how do we control the? Okay, in the other buildings, some of the equipment is being replaced and modified. The new equipment is quieter, smaller, etc., and more efficient. The equipment that is being added at this location is new, and so what I want to do is just kind of walk you through the area, how we located where we would place the equipment. First thing we notice is that there are already some enclosures surrounding the buildings. This is one on the southwest corner of the community building. As you can see, this one's a little further out. This gives you an idea. There's two structures there already, enclosures at the location. This is the entrance from the west side of the building. One of the locations that we looked at placing the equipment is near this olive tree, which is protected. There's a courtyard there. It's kind of intrusive on the entrance into the building. The tree would probably suffer damage from the exhaust from the equipment, so it was not chosen as a good location. To the left of the tree and in front of the community center, you'll see a stairwell there. There's also a window well that runs along the building there. We looked at that option of placing the equipment down in there. It's a little bit narrow and deep. We really couldn't get around the equipment very well, and was not easily accessible for maintenance or sufficient airflow for the equipment. There's a green belt that runs along the building, and we'd hate to disturb that. It would also be intrusive to the trees, the exhaust. It's a nice looking courtyard or yard right now, and we'd hate to disturb that. When you get to the northwest corner of the building, there's a little courtyard that's sort of made. There's an L-shaped configuration where there's an exit from the community hall and office location behind it. Just against the exit from the community hall, somebody has placed along the times a transformer and electrical enclosure, which is not really the greatest looking when you're driving from north heading south looking at the community center. As you can see, it kind of sticks out there. The area that we chose here, if we built an enclosure around that, would also help conceal this electrical vault. So far this seemed to be the best choice. We can easily access the equipment, easy to get it into the building to make it efficient. At the same time serves a purpose of helping to sort of fix up this corner of the building a little bit. The roof line was looked at as well. There's a new piece of art out in the courtyard. When you look across, if we start placing the equipment on the roof, it would stick up immensely. There's already, as you can see, a lot of vents, etc., on the roof, and we didn't want to deter from the rest of the features of the area. It would also be difficult to place up there structurally. There's quite a bit of, as you can see, equipment up there. So again, this would be the preferred choice of locations for this equipment. Easily maintained, sort of fixes up the area a little bit, helps conceal the electrical vault that's already in place. Again, what we would try to do is match the existing enclosures around the building with a similar type fencing. Brought a sample board width and color that we would use, similar hardware as to the enclosures that are already there.
Random screw.
Hopefully a little better construction. So again, the four choices, The top left is where the olive tree is, not a good location. To the right of that is the greenbelt area. Again, could be damaging to the trees. The bottom left shows the window well, which unfortunately is just too inaccessible to place the equipment. And the bottom right, the choice of locations. Do you have any questions?
Questions? Why don't we start at this end, and Beth, you want to start? We'll work our way across.
Let's see. First, I should disclose that I visited the site yesterday afternoon, late, actually almost in the evening, and then that I am extremely familiar with this ballroom because I've been setting up for the Palo Alto Historical Association meetings there for 30 years. So I've watched how this room gets used. And I did have some questions. Now then, it was a little hard to scale in the plans, but that the door leading out of that ballroom is a 42-inch door, so it's a very wide door. And it is the only access directly to the outside from that whole ballroom. The other accesses have to go out through the lobby and into the courtyard. And so it both is a place where people sometimes bring in instruments and musical instruments or pieces of equipment if they have a parking place out on the street, and that's the closest wide entry to get in. So that's one factor to think about, and makes me a bit concerned. Did you think a bit about this as egress in terms of fire? Because you need a good wide space because there have to be a lot of people trying to get out that door. Has the fire department looked at it or thought about this plan?
Yes, they have. We've actually improved the area a little bit. Excuse me. We're adding a walkway from that area right now. It's a step down, so it's going to be an actually improved area now. The access will be wider than the entranceway actually, and it will make a legal egress out of it at this point in time.
Oh, good. So then did that involve moving your fence a bit?
We always kept the space enclosed for egress at that point. There's another project in place to replace the brick walkways around the building. This is actually going to tie into that brick walkway and extend it to the stairs now, so you're not just walking out onto dirt. So it'll be a regular egress at this time.
The other thing that I had questions about, and this is more in the purview of this board, is the fact that the chimney is quite a significant architectural feature, although I'm not quite sure about the functionality of it because there's no fireplace in that end of the building. But there is a raised platform down at that end, so that I think to keep good views of the chimney, and then those two little windows that are adjacent to the chimney are nice looking architectural features, because this is what you see from Middlefield.
Correct.
And I was wondering if you had considered moving the entire enclosure so that both windows show, and then you have not much setback at the other end from the front of the building that faces Melville.
Right. We did locate the equipment in various configurations at that end of the building and found this one to be the less obtrusive to the windows. What was inside, looking out.
Yeah, but you can't see one of the windows practically. I mean, all you'd see of that little window is the top of it.
Right. And we lowered the fence as low as we could go to still cover the equipment. Unfortunately, the height restrictions
Yeah,
of it.
and that's what, 6 feet?
Yes. Yeah. 5'9". Right. We tried to keep as many of the windows exposed as we could, and so we shifted around.
But if it shifted to show both of those windows?
Then we were out past the edge of the building.
Didn't scale out that way, but, all right, thank you very
Then we
much.
would
Those are my
shift
questions.
further to the north.
All right.
Board members might also point out that shifting the enclosure in that direction might also cause it to encroach into the required 20-foot setback. So there might be that issue as well. So right now it's at 25 feet, 4.5 inches. So it's pretty much right up against the front setback area.
So I guess I'm next. Thank you for considering all those other locations. I think you've made the best choice. Obviously, we don't want a mechanical farm in front of the olive tree or along that broad mature landscaped facade of the building. There were only two issues that I was curious about. Is there any way to make the equipment smaller? I know that the equipment gets sized. And by the way, thank you for doing this. I spent 7 years taking dance lessons in this room, and it is miserable during the summer because it's so hot. So this will make it a much more comfortable environment. But it can be, and 5'9", those must be pretty big units.
They are. They're on pedestals, but we've recessed the pedestals into the ground to get the equipment as compact as we could. We chose the smallest, most compact equipment we could. It's a very large volume area when you get in there and look, and so.
I get it. I know. I mean, I'm just asking with the understanding. I expected that would be the answer. You're not making this bigger than it has to be. My thought was that the 6-foot high fence was a little bit intrusive. There are other instances on the property where you have 6-foot high fences. I was hoping you could get it down to like 42 inches, maybe, and then screen it with something green, but then you'd have to wait for the shrubbery which you show around this to grow up and cover it. So I guess that's it. Last issue, when you build a fence, do you attach it to the building, or can you build it so the fence stops within like an inch or two?
There would be a small separation there.
Yeah,
you don't want the wood right up against the structure.
Good. That's all, because it's an historic structure, and so if you don't make an attachment to the structure, that makes it better for the building. Other than that, well thought out, and I have no problem supporting this.
Yes, I have one just comment or question. I'm looking at drawing A2.0, and I'm looking at view number 1. If you take view number 1 on drawing A2.0.
Okay.
The roof plan, so-called roof plan. I guess that's where you show your it looks like a hedge around the enclosure.
Yes.
That hedge. Okay, so the plan does include planting some vegetation around the enclosure.
Yes, it does.
Can you get a mature hedge on there so it's got some height to it and it doesn't take 10 years to grow?
It's my understanding that they grow fairly rapidly, and they would be, I believe, 10-gallon. But I have to check on the size. But yes, we could get the largest bucket.
Yes, if you get something a little higher, it'll give you immediate concealment of that fence structure, rather than waiting for 10 years for it to grow up and provide the concealment.
Yeah, I'll work with our landscape architect to pick the appropriate shrub for that area.
Okay, that's my main comment. I'm glad to see you put some type of hedge around it to conceal it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Kohler. I'm looking at the drawing, licensed architect. I can't read the name because of the signature. Is it who's the architect there? I can't read the name.
It's Advanced Design Consultants that is working on this project.
Okay, I just can't read his name here. As far as his credential working with historic properties, what's his experience working with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation? So, I didn't see any information on the packet here.
Right. They've worked on historic structures before. That's how we chose them in the original concept of this, because we're also looking at the architectural features of the rest of the structures too, interior as far as they're concerned. And they have experience with other similar structures. They've actually, I believe, worked on one of these structures in the past. I have to go back to verify that. We also have the historic review through the city as well, looking at this. And we're trying to be as least intrusive on the structure as possible, yet not make it look like it was an original to the building.
I also disclose that I've used the ballroom often, currently taking ballroom dance lessons there now. Certainly during the summer, it gets sweltering in there, so air conditioning would be much, much appreciated. I also share the concern that Board Member Butterman mentioned about that 42-inch open door. Often during events, that door is open, and if this proposed project is built, now we're going to be looking at a fence there. What's the decibel rating for the equipment? I didn't see that information either, and how loud that's going to be.
It's actually pretty quiet, and part of the use of the fence is to help direct that sound straight up so it doesn't bleed into the building.
Okay, I've had experience. I'm an architect. I've used fencing, tried to use fencing for sound mitigation. I don't believe a wood fence mitigates sound much. I don't think that's my suggestion. But the decibel rating, I know the building has code requirements for so many decibels per at a certain distance. Maybe that'd be information to make sure that meets code.
Sure, we can verify that. I know that we did look at various equipments. We tried to pick the most modern, compact, quiet, efficient equipment that we could.
Regarding the impact of this proposal on the historic structure, I also share Beth's comment about the historic masonry chimney that's there. Right now, it's visible to the ground. This proposed structure would block the public view of that significant historic feature. And that's why I'm asking about my concern about one of the findings that are necessary for the Secretary of Interior standards about, for example, Standard 9 says the new work shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic inventory integrity. I am not feeling that that fence is compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features, particularly since it's going to be blocking the view of more of that masonry unit and the facade of the stucco of the building and the two existing windows that are there. Have you thought about suppressing that equipment below grade in that location, just so that there's no impediment of any public view of the historic structure?
Right, that would be hard to do because you got to maintain a certain area around the equipment, 36-inch distance for electrical and similar for mechanical access for maintenance. Mm-hmm. The equipment wouldn't be able to get its proper airflow. That's why we looked at the originally along the window wells for something similar to that. It would be an immense pit there at that location. As you can see, the chimney you're talking about is already fairly much concealed by that part of the wing that comes out. It's actually embedded into that wing, so there's only a small portion of it that is visible. And as you drive past it, you'll still be able to, we're stopping at the closest to the left of that second window as possible, you'll still be able to get a view in of that chimney. And from the front, it really shouldn't conceal very much because most of it is already concealed from the structure.
Yeah. Referring to, I understand the mechanics of making sure there's enough airflow. If you took the proposed plan with the 6-foot fence around it, it's obviously giving enough air. What if you just took exactly what you're proposing and just sunk it down some feet just to have a less visual impact on the facade of the building? But that's still let you get the required airflow.
Get the airflow, but it wouldn't safely get the mechanics into to function with the equipment.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what?
The mechanics that have to service the equipment, it wouldn't be safe for them to get in there and have adequate space and room. Doors, everything has to open up and be able to walk into it.
I just did a little diagram with a little access letter there. It just says, okay, well, those are my thoughts. If they can somehow, I also visited the site yesterday and just walking around see all the possibilities. And I agree with your rejection of the other possible location of ideas. I assume that there's no, and you also, I think, talked about roof mounted. I understand the complications about that. And I assume there's no attic space in the structure.
Pardon? There's
no attic space in the structure to put it mechanically?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Ballrooms.
Yeah. So those are my comments. If there's somehow, I think it's intrusive to the historic structure in some way. Anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
That was one of my questions to see if there was any available attic space or any areas inside the building that some of the equipment can be placed. However, I know that all the condensers have to be outside.
Outside.
But I think my reaction is the view from the windows that are not the ballroom, but on that same sheet A2, the section E. When you look out those windows of those meeting rooms, especially this one window on the left will have a unit not too far away from the window. So I think that would be somewhat of a negative impact, at least to the interior of that room. Is there any way that you could, I know that you need access, mechanical access or access to the units. Could you put the 2 rows of units almost back to back and have gates or access from either side of the fence instead of having one gate access that you'd have to go all the way around? Could you place the units sort of back to back closer together and then actually bring the fencing closer to the units, but when you need to access them you can open a wide gate and then access the unit that way, just to minimize the fencing, minimize that mechanical area, have it more of like a closet situation in a way with no top on it, but just bring the 2 rows of units really close together, have the fencing around them, but the fencing isn't in front of the windows, so the windows would be able to look out onto the property. Is that at all a possibility?
We looked at various configurations of placing the equipment. There has to be a certain distance between them as they're placed. We looked at latitude with the building, longitude, each direction. Again, we had to maintain our setback distances as required. We would also almost have to have a removable fence structure, which we looked at that as well, but by the time you got the proper distance for the equipment as it was placed inside, I mean, we looked at various brands, models, et cetera, to try and get these as small as possible and least intrusive to the area, and this was the best combination that we could come up with.
It just seems like those windows from those existing meeting rooms would compromise their view.
Right. I don't know that there's really much going on inside those. A lot of storage inside that area.
Okay.
Could do 36 inches here, 36 inches there, and have it back to back like
Does the board have any thoughts, or if I'll wait till Philip is ready. What about the option of if the units if the units are attractive enough, what if the fence was not a solid fence? Well, first of all, is a fence required, I guess?
You want to protect the equipment a little bit from vandalism.
Okay, I
You
understand.
don't want people going up kicking the coils or anything else. There's a lot of little kids that walk by.
Sure.
Don't
I
want
understand.
them sticking their fingers in places, you know.
Okay, yeah. If the equipment is actually attractive enough, what if there is not a solid fence? What if it was a fence you can see through, still provide your security, so some kind of a metal fence or some material that doesn't create the mass that a 6-foot-high fence with, it's probably about 25, 50, it looks like 50, 75, 50, at least 50 feet, lineal feet of fence. That would reduce the massing. That's probably my concern about the proposal we're seeing in front of us. Look at all the renderings. It's adding a 6-foot-high mass, sizable mass. If the mass went away and just made it transparent, would that work for Public Works to have a fence that you can see through?
I don't think we had a problem with the type of screening. I think what we were trying to do was match what was already in the location that has been built there. Again, there's already 2 similar locations.
Yeah, I understand.
Buildings, so we wanted, aesthetically, we were trying to keep it uniform with what was already in existence.
I appreciate that. Does the board have, and I'm looking for any board comments if they think, as long as the equipment is attractive enough, let's just get rid of the mass of the fence, just so you see units only this big rather than a mass this big. Thank you.
Okay. Could I take my...
We, in many cases, don't look at the interiors of buildings, but since this is a city building, can you tell me where the airflow will go into that ballroom, because it's an open ceiling?
It's my understanding that it's going to be blown in from one side. There will be a ductwork, an exposed ductwork through the building. We've used those in other locations. They actually turn out to be kind of attractive once you get used to them. They're
Ductwork there now
yeah.
for heating.
Okay. Did you say? Go ahead.
You think you could paint the electric panel
We're going to
a
do
color that would match the building? I mean, white is not the best color to put
Right.
on a mechanical space, but it's such an odd color and it doesn't match anything.
No, that's correct. We did look at that, and one of our choices here was using that to help conceal what somebody's already placed there that's obtrusive to the area. And yes, we will paint that to match.
Great, thanks.
Okay. I have a couple just minor comments. If you look on page A2, the lateral elevation G, that's looking where the site is, correct, in the lower right-hand corner?
Correct.
Yeah. So you can see there the windows are, there's a larger window and a smaller window, then a larger window. But the drawing on page A1, 2 cross-section shows 2 size same windows. And maybe that's not as on page 2, and I've been by that home, then the far left, is that a corner of the building or is that another window right above the word G? That's a different building in the back. Right where your thumb is, right above there's a, yeah, right where you're looking. Those 2 windows are different sizes. There you go. So there. And then the big window is not, it's not shown at all. And it shows 2 smaller windows when in fact one's larger than the second one's. They also look small. They don't look as tall as they're, I don't think they're drawn accurately, I guess is what I'm saying. And you're missing the window.
Okay, these aren't the windows that's being shown there. These are the compressors, the condensing units.
Wait, no. What are the grids? What are the
Right.
grids?
No,
What are the grids on the wall?
Right. No, I see what you're saying. Yes, that window is actually narrower.
And then there's a window that's missing.
And then there's no window over here.
Right. I think what they were trying to emphasize on here was the equipment against the building, which they didn't want to get it lost with the window behind it, but I can have them correct that drawing.
Show it.
Okay, well,
Blocks out a lot of windows.
I'm not, what?
Blocks out a lot of windows.
Well, we don't know what the the rooms inside you say are essentially storage at the moment, is that
I
the,
believe their storage is in there.
well, that's my next point. The large hedge pretty much blocks the windows anyway. And I'm not sure, I think having the fence and the hedges, to me, are slightly preferred because it's kind of just becomes an open invitation if you can see in there and see for kids throwing things and stuff. Or, I guess I would have liked to seen the drawings of the windows more accurately is what I guess I'm trying to say without missing a window. I'm not sure it would change my mind totally. I don't know. I haven't going there since 1954, so when I was a stagehand at the Children's Theater. Ancient history. Okay, suggestions for Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Kohler. Continuing on Board Member Bunnenberg's comment about ductwork, will it be ductwork on the exterior of the building leading from the new proposed equipment into the ballroom?
Will there be?
Ductwork on the outside of the building.
No, that won't be visible.
I'm sorry.
There will be no
what I
visible
said.
ductwork on the outside of the building.
Okay, so the ductwork would go below ground and then...
This will go up into units that are up above in the attic and then supply into the...
Okay,
into
so
the
there'll be
ballroom.
no ductwork visible on the outside of the building from this project? Okay, thank you.
What was that last? I didn't hear that.
Philip mentioned there would be no new ductwork exposed on the project if
So
this
it goes
gets approved.
underground into the building?
Goes into the building, up into the attic where the rest of the equipment is, and then it flows into the...
So some of the rooms next to it will probably lose some space because there'll be ducts in the corner going up to the attic?
No, this actually would be a cooling loop, more of a, we're going to put a small hose more or less.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah, okay.
Up to that area, and then supply the coils up in the attic area.
One last comment I was thinking about is that the view here that's on our screen right now, that will not really change because you'll still see the chimney going down to the ground. In fact, will that hedge remain that's in this picture right now in front of the chimney?
I believe it does, because that's on the other side of the door, so it does not affect the egress.
I'm not sure it does, actually.
Yeah, it does remain.
So the door's
But,
behind,
I mean,
oh wait, I
it
see.
could clean up the area a little bit.
So in this picture in the lower right-hand corner, that piece of equipment will be removed? Is that going to stay, the gray box I'm seeing?
Those gray boxes are the electrical vaults that were put in at some point in time. I don't know when, and along with another project. Those remain. What we're going to do is paint them to match the building now and help use this equipment now to sort of shield, so if that's not your view as you're driving up to the building.
All right. Any other questions or for staff? Beth, go ahead.
Are we waiting for comments?
I think so. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Actually,
Wait a minute.
What?
So we'll close the public hearing? Is that what? I don't know. I don't know, even if, are you guys considered public? No, not really, are you? No. Huh? It is a public hearing, but there's no public. Okay, Beth, go ahead.
Actually, I rather like the continuation of the brown fencing. I think that it much more blends with the flavor of many of the Burge Clark buildings that we have seen. And I think to change to a see-through would be more tempting to the public. To how can I get in there? I can see something. There might be some copper wiring. So I think that a more see-through would be discordant with the feel of the building to me. And so I like it, and I like your clipped corners. I think that's a very nice way of making it a more interesting fencing, of giving a tiny bit more view of that corner. So I like that.
Thank you.
You have comments? And David, do you want to go now, or? We'll just go ahead.
Yeah, my only comment would be, my preference would be, and recommendation would be to put some nice strap hinges on the doors going into the enclosure. You had some nice ironwork hinges I saw on some of the other views, but I think that would really dress up the look of those two access doors. One of the other ones, like that ironwork, that really looks attractive if you could get something like that going.
Okay. Margaret?
I mean, I guess we're limited to the equipment has to preside over, you know, I wish there were more options to conceal it, but I guess it's a mechanical element of the building and there's really nothing you can do about it.
So you're not happy with the equipment?
No, I'm saying that the equipment, we don't have a choice about the equipment.
Yeah, I know.
We just have a choice about how it's treated, how how it's concealed. I don't think it's, to me, I think there might be some better options design-wise, but there's no other options that are being presented. So, and I think there could be better solutions, but.
Okay. Martin?
So I was looking at this this past week. I was thinking, what would Burge Clark do if he was asked by his client to install equipment here? What would he do? I'm thinking he would try to find if there's some way to include the equipment within the envelope of the building in some form. So, okay. But.
All right. I tend to agree with just about everything everyone said. And I think the comment about the ironwork on the gate would be quite nice because, in fact, those gates that you've shown are right opposite the main door to the ballroom, which would be a nice feature if you're on a summer day going in and out or whatever, and you see this gate with a little bit of reminiscent of the old the hardware in other parts of the campus there. So, I mean, it's kind of new world versus old world here. We have to make some accommodations to keep people cool when they're dancing. So, I mean, the community center itself is just a wonderful place. You go to other cities and things like that and happen to stop in, and there's not many that compare to what we have here in Palo Alto. It's quite a special feature, and the Children's Theater is just an amazing feature, and then everything that goes on in that community center is very, very unusual. And so I think you're doing the best we can to bring comfort and coolness to the building in today it's going to be 90 some degrees outside. I'm not sure I'd be one of dancing there today. So do I have a motion here?
Before that, and a thank you to Lucy Stern for beginning the idea, and big time, of public-private partnership with the city. It was her money that, from Blue Jeans, that allowed the building of all of her gifts. And so, thank you, Lucy Stern.
Okay. You want to make a motion, Beth?
Yeah, I move the approval of this project as submitted with the, and board can help me, with the proviso to paint the existing mechanical structure that's called, has a Siemens electric panels on it, and that the fence be as presented, that there be no ductwork or venting on ductwork on the outside of the building, that the fence not touch the building, and that the interior ductwork in the big ballroom be placed as close, as unobtrusively as possible.
Okay.
Would the maker of the motion care to consider strap iron hinges be added to the gate?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second to generally approve the project as presented with the addition of straps and comments about the ducting, which is kind of a little bit beyond our purview, I think, but good. All those in favor?
Wait, before you take a vote, I have a question.
Yes.
I was asking if the maker of the motion, the seconder of the motion, would accept this as to be included in the motion, that the decibel rating of the equipment does not exceed the limits required by Palo Alto ordinance.
I will accept that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Martin, David?
I'm slightly uncomfortable about that particular amendment, and also the part of the motion that deals with the ducting on the interior. We haven't been presented with anything that we can evaluate, and I don't think that's in the purview of this board. And I think it's presumptuous of us to make a requirement that we have not, that the applicant, in this case it's a city, hasn't been able to evaluate. I suspect it doesn't matter, but I'm not comfortable having in a motion information that we just simply have had no evidence of or discussion of.
I think I would tend to agree with that.
So
We have no data, and we're just,
I think
we could say, if possible, you could say some general thing about it, I suppose, but it's not even, it's our understanding, we don't even really deal with interiors of buildings, is that correct?
Thank you, Chair Kohler. So the ordinance states that generally exterior alterations shall be the subject matter, but that does leave open possibilities or scenarios where certain interiors would be subject, and those would be significant interiors. And one way to think of a significant interior would be a publicly accessible, historically publicly accessible, and publicly owned space might be considered. So I think the board does have some purview to review some interiors when the board does feel that they are significant interiors. The code does allow for that judgment.
So my concern is, again, that we haven't had any discussion about this. We don't have any information. And also, if my recollection is correct, and it might not be, I think that the interior ceiling of that space, the big ballroom, has been modified well beyond what was originally there. They've got sound attenuation boards on the ceiling. They've got ductwork there that probably stays. I'm assuming that ductwork stays. So I just don't know whether... I think this makes it more difficult for us to send a clear message, as the mayor has asked us to in the last meeting, about what we're doing as a board. So I think the noise attenuation thing is very important, and I think the industry has addressed that. So I don't think that anything would be installed, and I don't have a problem supporting that. But again, what if there's a 50 decibel, I think there's a 50 decibel limit at 50 feet away from equipment, but what if this equipment doesn't meet that, then what?
Well, my suggestion about that is there are funeral wakes, there are weddings, lectures that go on in that building, and when that door is open, that sound would, I think, bother a lot of people. And I've seen equipment installed that it appears to exceed the noise ordinance. And once it's there, well, then it's there. And so that's why I'm asking that it looks like it's been approved by the maker and seconder that the equipment does not exceed decibel ratings required by code. Thank you.
So I don't have a problem with that, but I'm thinking that when this equipment is on, you're probably not going to have the door open because you're going to be air conditioning, and thus the equipment noise is there. And then when the door is open, the equipment wouldn't be on because you wouldn't be using it. But
well,
that's a small point.
That's not controllable. So.
No, of course not. But you'd hope that the door wouldn't be open when they're trying to cool a building. Anyway, that's just.
So are you asking to just remove the comment about the interiors ducting?
I think so, unless we have some, unless this wants to come back to us, but I don't see any reason to do that. I'm not hearing we're going to get any changes inside of significance.
Would you
Chair Kohler,
approve staff looking at the plan for the interior?
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. So technically, the application is just for the exterior alterations. There's not an application currently for the interior. The board, in its judgment, if it feels that this is an important interior space, may condition this project that when the interior work is proposed, that the board do have an opportunity to review and comment on the interior work. That's one alternative that the board can
I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah, or I'm comfortable with Beth's suggestion that staff review this. I don't think we need to take this up as a board, unless it becomes significant. If everything in that room is going to be removed, then maybe we ought to look at it. But if we're just going to modify what's there and add a coil inline, which I think is what's going to happen here, then we don't need to do this. Actually, it's in the attic. The coil's in the attic, isn't it?
Correct. That part does not have an attic. It's more exposed. It comes out of the attic. That's
Right,
the adjoining structure.
Yeah, I remember. But I think staff can deal with this.
Regarding the decibels, this is a permitted item. This does go through the regular procedure as anybody else would do for a building permit. So it's going to be looked at by mechanical, building, civil, et cetera, through the building process.
Yep. Okay.
But I think we are talking about more the aesthetics of it than the
on the interior.
code.
On the interior is what you're. I'm comfortable with not including the interior comment because I think that is a little beyond what we have. As David says, we haven't seen anything. We're just making general pie in the sky comment. So I move that we remove the comment about commenting on the interior ducting at this time. Does anyone? Is that?
I think what you're asking is the maker of the motion to consider that as a request, because it's not really. Do you do a motion to change that?
No, the appropriate the appropriate action would be to ask the maker if they're amenable to that change, and if they're not, then the board would vote on the motion as made and seconded.
Maker of the motion.
I think I'm not amenable to that. So.
Okay.
So then does the motion pass without that?
Well, the motion is still before the board.
Yeah.
Someone, another board member may make a substitute motion if they care to do that. Then I believe the substitute motion is voted on first, and then the second motion is considered, or the original motion is considered. Or the board may simply consider the motion before it.
Okay. Apparently, it's not important enough to battle over it, so. So now, there has been a motion before the board. Is there any other discussion or comment?
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
On the interior, is there anticipated to be more ductwork in the ceiling of the ballroom? Right now, there is a large duct for heating, I believe. So there'll be now another duct added up there for a cooling system, or is it reusing, also using the same heating ducts that are there already?
They might redo the existing duct if that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
They would replace it with one that would dual function.
I'm sorry, let me turn up the volume
I'm anticipating
here.
that they would replace with a dual function duct that would go in. I can verify that and pass maybe on to you the actual duct material if you'd like to see that.
Because that could impact the interior. Right now, there's a pretty large duct up there. If there was another one parallel to it, now we're really loading up that visible ceiling and all the truss work with multiple ducts, and we haven't seen that, and it's not clear if there's going to be 2 ducts or 1 duct. That could affect the interior of a major historic structure, Category 1 structure, Burge Clark.
Well, we could ask them to come back if that'd be the case for a second project.
Right. I mean, we haven't been asked to approve any interior work here. And if, in fact, there's significant modification of that ductwork, then it ought to come back to us. That ought not to be a staff issue because, and if they can get rid of it and downsize, I don't understand why you'd need a second set of ducts because heat and cooling occurs in the same ductwork.
That's true for new construction. It may be a budgetary reason as don't touch the existing duct and the existing heating system, put in a new system. That may be more budgetary. Well, we don't know the answer to that question because it's not showing, we don't have drawings of what's going to be permitted.
Okay, so based on what was presented today, that ducting is not changing. That's what we're hearing. So I think that's the basis upon which we make a decision. And in that case, maybe Beth would consider modifying her motion to say that if the interior ductwork is going to be modified, that needs to be reviewed by the board.
Yes. I would consider that. I think that would be a...
Yeah, so I'm assuming, based on what was presented, that there is no interior work, and if that's not the case, then I do want the board to look at it.
Sounds great.
What if we limit it to a single duct, whether it's the one that's existing or one that replaces the duct that's there?
I think if you're going to change the duct, you need to come back to us, and that doesn't have to. Maybe we can do it on a consent.
Yeah, it could be. It could be different ducting based upon air conditioning has different requirements than heating. You know, where you place it. You know, one wants to be low and one wants to be high.
Well, they're all going to be high.
So, I mean, but the air, you might be surprised. The air conditioning people might say they want an entirely different ducting system.
They might, but I think they're not going to be low. The air conditioning wants to be high so that the cool air drops. But if they're going to change it, then I want to see it.
Okay.
Chair Kohler, permission to address the board?
Yes.
Another option that the board may consider is that staff review the changes and determine if it requires board level review or could be approved administratively. Just putting that out there.
That is one of my complaints here, that some of this stuff gets filtered out before it gets to the HRB. I kind of object to that.
Yeah, we've had some events in the past where staff has approved things that...
Present company accepted.
But for instance, we did see quite a bit about the interior of the College Terrace Library.
Yes.
Remember?
Yeah, we did.
They're precedents for our...
I think it's appropriate.
So why don't you adjust your motion and we'll move forward.
All right. I use the basic motion that we approve the project as presented, that the fencing be as presented, but with decorative iron hinges or latches, fittings, and that Was there another part?
The decibel ratings?
But,
Decibel reading.
but if there are changes in the ductwork in the ballroom, that come back to us.
Is there a second for that motion?
As the original seconder, I'll second again.
Okay. All right, any comments for the discussion?
Staff has the comment about the decibels right here.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Painting of the panel.
Also, in our and Philip, the reason we're discussing this is a significant structure, or the Historic Resources Board, and it's our charge to take a look at that. So that's why you're hearing all these comments. I think you're hearing 100% support. Let's get cooling in that building. So good. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed? That passes with Board Member DeSicchio absent. Unanimously, yes. Thank you very much for coming in. We look forward. It's actually an easy project to observe because you can see it from Middlefield. So you're going to have all of us driving by checking on what you're doing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to the coolness.
Yeah. Okay, we're now down to board items. It says none. Is that correct? Wow, that's good news. Any board staff announcements, updates, reports, or comments? Members of the public may not speak to the items.
Thank you, Chair Kohler. Two brief announcements. Just to update the HRB on the memo to the council. Staff has not yet completed the draft, but staff will be completing that very shortly and contacting the subcommittee members, the three HRB members appointed to review and finalize that memo. So apologize for the delay on that. And also, just to let you know that you have a letter at your places indicating that the City of Palo Alto has been awarded $37,000 by the Office of Historic Preservation to conduct and complete the Professorville design guidelines. And so the next step will be for staff to request from the City Council authorization to spend $13,000 as a local match, which would give us a total of $50,000 in cash with which to contract with a professional consultant to develop some really top-notch design guidelines for, of course, one of the California's most important historic districts. So I think that's definitely a good thing, and look forward to continuing to submit CLG grant applications in the coming years.
Good.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, that's going to be good. Any else have any other comments? Oh, David.
I have one thing that we have, several of us have need for training for this year. And I would like to request the CEQA training that is occurring in San Francisco on July the 22nd. And it is presented by the California Preservation Foundation.
Right, I was going to bring up the same thing, this flyer. There are actually two CEQA-related issues. One is the CEQA from all angles that Beth just raised or just discussed, and the other one is district designation to infill development, which is what I'm interested in the day before. So July 21st is infill in historic districts, and the 22nd one is CEQA from all angles. Those are the titles.
Wow, two continuous days, huh?
Well, I'm only interested in the first one. I think I've had my fill of CEQA for the last few years. Not that you can ever really understand it. It's so complicated. But I think the infill in the historic district is particularly relevant to our situation here in Palo Alto, so I want to explore that further. So I've already asked Diana to sign me up for that. Anybody wants to see this, it's...
I don't know if I got that.
Can we be signed up for both these seminars?
We'll have to check, see what our training budget is, but I think there's, we definitely would encourage that, and we would support that if we have the budget. I think staff is also interested in attending one or both of those as well. So maybe, let's see, at the next meeting, perhaps we can report back as to what the availability of the funding is, and then poll the commissioners, the board members who certainly want to go. And then just a reminder, we have CLG trainings coming up as well in August, and then in September if any board members can't make the August dates.
Yeah, they actually have some pretty interesting seminars. I mean, they're all good, the ones I've been to, but they have many this year.
What was the one in August?
The one in August is a CLG training for commissioners, board members, and staff. I don't recall the exact date, but I believe in August, that one's in Capitola, and then in September, there's a Sacramento workshop. And we will be getting back to you on the registration for that, which should be opening up very soon.
If you register before July 7th for these two, there's a $40 reduction in cost, so definitely
We'll look into that right away.
save the city a few bucks.
And maybe you could by email what
I'm
you
sure I
find
did
out
this.
so we can.
Yep.
I'm a member down. I'm a member of that. So
Okay, any other announcements, any board items? So when's our next meeting, do we know?
second Thursday.
July 9th.
July 9th, okay.
July 9th?
Are you here?
4th of July.
Well, if you're not going to be,
No,
if any
I'm
of
not
us are
here.
not going to be at the meeting, we'd probably try to let you know and make sure we
I
have
won't
a
be here.
quorum. Oh, you won't be, okay.
Not here either.
Not here, oops, okay, we're down to, whoops, we better verify who's going to be around. We need 5, right, or not? Oh, we need 4, okay. Well, okay, well, we better try to check out who's around. I have to, somewhere in there, I'm going to be gone too, so. Okay,
How many are going to expect to be available on the 9th?
I'll be.
I think I'm okay on that. Okay. I will verify that with my wife, so. Okay, thank you. I think the meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff. Turn off our
no matter what the road was.